Welcome to What to Do When, a podcast from real lawyers with real perspective, where we explore a variety of legal issues and scenarios. Each week, we focus on a new topic and discuss what to do when and if any of these legal scenarios ever happen to you or a loved one. With over 40 years of combined legal experience, our hosts offer their unique perspectives and insights on a range of real-life legal situations.
Hi, welcome back to Critzer Cardani's podcast, What to Do When.
What's on the docket for today, Jackie?
So today it's what to do when you're expecting. Seems like an appropriate topic.
We're not talking about the medical, right?
No.
Yeah, we wanted to discuss today, and for those of you who don't know, my partner is pregnant right now. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on the air, but, it did prompt our thought process, and we thought, this comes up a lot, actually, more than you would think, and we wanted to discuss a little bit so you know your rights both as the father and the mother of the situation, and sometimes people just don't understand what their rights are, what their responsibilities are, all those things, so we thought we would cover that, and it was timely with everything. And then, of course, I wore my swag today, which is our still Critzer Cardani logo. So,
and I just matched the color scheme, so it works.
It works, so we'll go forward. So, Jackie, you're pregnant.
I am.
You're married.
I also am married.
Okay. So, let's talk about Daryl's.
And it's his child.
Okay. No questions about that. So, what's his rights right now?
As to the child?
Yeah, as to the child, sorry.
He doesn't have any rights to the child.
What? No way.
Right. So not only does he not have any rights to the child, mostly that's because the law doesn't really recognize the life until it's a life in being. So once it's born, and we're not talking about abortion. That's a very different topic for a very different podcast. But if the law doesn't recognize that there are two people involved in the making of the baby, the law recognizes that it's inside of my body. So if I want to have an amniocentesis, I can. If I want...
Wait a minute. What's an amniocentesis?
So that's a big fancy word for extracting some of the amniotic fluid, which carries risk with it. And you can determine a whole bunch of things. Paternity, you can determine paternity through an amniocentesis. You can determine some genetic malformations and a lot of varying things with an amniocentesis. But really the question is, could my husband or my partner or the father of my child ask me or direct or order me or compel me?
Through even court, like go to court and say, hey, I want to know if this is my baby right now.
Right. Could a man do that while the woman is pregnant? And the answer is no. You can't make her do anything. You can't make her stop smoking weed, stop smoking cigarettes. You can't make her stop drinking. It's not a crime for her to do legal substances, even though not appropriate or not recommended by the American gynecological folks. But you can't make her do anything. You have zero control as the partner or the child's father.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I want to emphasize, I know she said it, but just remember, if you're going to talking about amniocentesis, make sure you look at the risk. It's not as simple as that, but there are a lot of risk on both sides. But anyways, moving forward. Yeah, it's really important to know that because I think a lot of times when two people conceive a child together, there's this expectation. And fathers need to know you don't have any expectation. No child support, no nothing. I mean, if Daryl wanted to walk off in the sunset and say, I'm not doing anything, and see when the child's born, he could do that. So that's how the law looks at it. We don't believe that. We don't think like that. But we're just kind of talking about how the law is and what the law is currently and how the state of the law is. So it's really, what if, take it to the next scenario. You're unmarried.
Okay.
Same scenario. You know who the dad is. No question. There's no question of paternity. And even if there was, could a father in that situation, somebody who knows that he's the father, can he make you stop drinking, smoking, make you take a test, anything like that?
There's nothing that an outside person, outside of me, can make me do during the pregnancy.
Well, let me ask a question then. So say Daryl, well, I don't want to go there. Let me try another scenario. Let's just say guy and girl get together, girl gets pregnant. Turns out that girl, for whatever reason, maybe it's a legitimate reason, maybe it's an abusive situation or something else, and she wants to go to California IA.
Okay.
Can I stop her?
No.
Why not? It's my child in there.
It's not recognized as a life in being. Like, you couldn't file custody over a fetus or...
And trust me, I've tried it. When I was first started, man, I have. So, I mean, I tried to do those things because I thought it was important that somebody shouldn't be able to take off and disappear. So what we're saying is, literally, Jackie could just go off grid.
I mean, married or unmarried, in all truthfulness, I could just take off. Now, there are so many things in that. But for sure, if I wasn't married, if I were not married and I knew the father and I said, hey, this is your baby. We knew, maybe we even did an amnio. Maybe we just knew that we knew that we knew. It just doesn't matter. I could go to Canada, Australia, anywhere. And would be nothing he could do but follow me.
Yeah. And the laws are very different in different states and especially different countries, man. You start getting into that kind of stuff, there's crazy stuff going on. But so we're just saying that I just think a lot of people get confused and rightfully so. I mean, quite frankly, I'm of the mind that, when two people conceive a child, two people conceived a child. It could have been done by one person. So I don't like the way the law currently reads, and somebody will probably not like that I don't like it. But I just don't like it because there's a concept here that says Jackie gets to make all the decisions, whether she has the child, doesn't have the child, whether she runs away or whether she doesn't. But when that child comes out, I have no decisions I can make as to whether I support that or don't support that. So to me, the law isn't logical and it doesn't make sense because it should be the same the whole way through from my perspective. And that's the way I look at it because I don't think, you don't get any rights here, you get rights here. It's just kind of weird to me. So,
and so if you can't force her to determine paternity while the child is in utero, the next question is, well, when can you require that the child go through some sort of paternity determination?
And that's like you said, until that child is born. And like we're saying, I just want to say this because I think it's very clear. Say Jackie's pregnant. She takes off to California IA. I'm doing that on purpose. But anyways, she's there. She has the child. Now I have some rights, but California law is in play because the child was born there.
Right.
I still may be in Virginia. The likelihood of me compelling her back at that point is probably slim and none. And then on top of that, she can just go down to the courthouse and order support. So I could start paying support in Virginia while she's in California, never get to see my child because maybe my work's, I can't leave because I don't have a job out there. I personally would probably just leave and go and make it happen. But I'm just saying there's a lot of factors in that really complicate and make the law not very amenable to fathers, especially at this stage. I mean, at the pregnancy stage.
I think that's a fair statement. And so when can you at the hospital? So what if you're at the hospital, baby's born, same day, can dad ask for a paternity test at that point? I mean, I think so, but I don't know what all the medical rules are at that point.
Well, he can, but the question becomes, does he get put on the birth certificate if he's in the room and he's the father?
And are they different? So this is an important distinction. There's a difference between taking a blood test and determining you are or are not the dad, like on some of those afternoon TV shows, okay?
Which we never get to watch.
Versus not taking a paternity test, but being placed on the birth certificate. So what happens, you take a test, I mean, it's pretty clear then, but we're 99.99% sure, right, that the dad is or is not the dad. But then what happens if you don't do a paternity test and you are on the birth certificate?
Well, are you saying, what if I have a question? Like, all of a sudden, I was in the hospital with you. You had the baby. Daryl, I'm not taking your place. Anyways, I'm there, and they put me on the birth certificate.
Yeah.
5 days later, I found out you're married to Daryl, and, we weren't even together. It was just a figment of my imagination. I don't even know why I was at the hospital.
There you go.
But anyways, so therefore, at that point...
What do you do? Is there a presumption? There is under the law, by the way. If you're on the birth certificate, there is a presumption there.
Yeah, for instance, at this moment now, I'm on the birth certificate. Jackie could go apply, even knowing that I'm not the father for real. She could go apply for child support, and I'd have to pay it. So unless I do what's called
a petition for paternity.
Yes. So I go to the court and I can ask. It's usually done in the juvenile court. It's a very simple petition. It's a petition for a paternity test. And so at that point, the court would order, 99.9% of the time, would order a test.
Right.
And it would be the easy test because the child's out. They can do all kinds of DNA swabs and get things easy ways. And there's no real mystery to how they do that or any safety issues there. So then, then you can find out. And so if I turn out not to be the father, listen very carefully. That doesn't end my child support at that moment. If I've already been ordered to child support and I do the paternity test and says, oops, you're not the father.
Well, now you've just done it all backwards. Now you're in big trouble.
Now I'm in big trouble.
So let's take it in the best order, okay? Baby comes out, paternity test is done, are or not the father, great. The next step, you are on the birth certificate, but you're not totally sure that you're the dad. And mom says, well, I want you to pay support. I don't care whether you're sure or not. I'm sure. Sure, you're sure. And so then she says, I'm going to the courthouse. I'm filing for support. Dad says, okay, fine. Well, I want a paternity test, which most of the time is so offensive to the mom.
Yes.
It just is. Just be aware. It's very offensive. I can't wrap my head around it, but it's offensive. And so then while the petition for support is waiting to be heard in the court is the time to get the paternity test.
Yes, exactly.
If you reverse that order, okay, and you are ordered to pay support, and then you're like, oh, I'll figure out paternity next year, next week, next month, next 5 years, you're stuck. That's it. The law says you're done. If there is an order for support, I have had several judges here in our Richmond area say, sir, do you understand that if you accept this child support order, this agreement, that you are going to be on the hook for support forever because you've not done a paternity test? I've had a few judges ask my clients as I'm standing right there next to them as though I didn't advise them properly. I don't get offended. It's fine. Ask away. And then I say, they're asking because if you aren't absolutely sure that you're the father, you're going to be on this child support until mom says you don't have to be, which isn't likely to happen.
And folks, this sounds horrible, but in the business we do, we run into problems all the time where people swear up and down there's nobody else and no way it could be. And
no way it could be.
No way possible. It would have had to have been somebody implanting a syringe when I was sleeping or whatever. I mean, and lo and behold, I mean, it is like the afternoon TV shows. You see it all the time. And so, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but, whether it's not, I want to say platonic, but it's not. What is it? Whether you're in one relationship and you believe that to be the case and you've always believed that to be the case.
Monogamous.
I'm monogamous. That's sorry. I could not pull that word out of my head. But anyways, those are things that sometimes there's a legitimate question. And I want to say something that might blow people's brains, but we had a few of these in the city of Richmond where if you have close family members all the way down to cousins and stuff, that 99% doesn't cover them. So people don't realize, I mean, paternity only takes so many, what are those little, I can't think what they're called.
Chromosomes?
No. I can't remember. Oh. It's off my brain. But anyways, paternity only looks at so many of those markers.
Oh, the DNA markers.
The DNA markers. And so when it's family and it's close family, they don't go deep enough to really know. And there was a lot of that, the old O.J. Simpson case and stuff and DNA and how those markers work. And I remember talking through that when it was there. But I remember a couple cases in Richmond where there was question whether it was two brothers and they were twin brothers. There's just no way to determine it through a paternity test. We don't have the markers. And even cousins, I remember one case where it was a cousin and really in the end, that paternity test wasn't enough. But the judge went with it because he had nothing else. Well, I determined that you're the father. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. He was he was in North Vietnam fighting a war when that happened. There's no way. But
right.
So just want you to know that. I know it sounds crazy, but we know there's crazy situations out there.
I think technology also keeps moving forward,
Yes.
especially in the DNA testing. And I mean, cold cases are getting cracked all the time because there's developments in the DNA processing. But the point remains that, it's important to do a little homework and do a little research when you're not married. But what about when you are married? Is there a presumption under the law that
The presumption is
talk
it's
about?
your child. Absolutely. The presumption under the law is if Daryl and Jackie have a pregnancy right now, the presumption is that Daryl's the father by marriage. He would go on the birth certificate via the marriage, even if he does protest.
Correct. The presumption is that he is the father. And that's a legal presumption, not just because I'm married and faithful, but because it's a legal presumption. So can you overcome that? Is it rebuttable? Of course.
Of course. It's the same thing. I mean, you got to go file a paternity test and you have to do that. And like Jackie says, man, you want to talk about in a marriage stirring up a hornet's nest. But again, we see these things and we have to talk about them because they're realities. I would say the number's over 10 in my career that, that we found out, surprise, you're not the dad. I had a guy who had been paying support. The kid was close to being 18 before he found out. And there was a reason he had to find out, and it really had nothing to do with court or anything. He found out through some other means. They were doing some kind of typing or something for some kind of sickness or something, and it turned out, and he was just devastated. He's like, I had no idea. But he realized in that moment, he goes, well, I've been his father his whole life. DNA is not going to change that. I raised him, and I really appreciated that. He switched immediately. I mean, he was stunned, though, shocked and hurt and all those things. But, I've seen some crazy things.
So I have a hypothetical.
Okay.
That truly, like most of our hypotheticals, really have nothing to do with either one of us. So, disclaimer, it has nothing to do with me. If a man and woman are married, okay, and she gets pregnant, and she did, in fact, have an affair. She was messing around, and it turns out that maybe husband really hadn't been intimate with her in the time frame necessary to create this child, okay? And the boyfriend, paramour, whatever, knows to a reasonable degree of certainty that he was with her relatively close to the right time. What rights does he have if it's presumed under the law that the woman's child belongs to the husband?
Yeah. Want the answer? Because it's not good.
Yeah.
My understanding is the presumption goes to your husband. And then the husband would have to be the one that says, I guess you could get the paternity test. You can always do that. You could request it. I mean, it's not, the father doesn't have to request the paternity test. The mother could do it.
But what about the paramour? I mean, we're talking about John Smith. John Smith says, hey, I know that's my baby and I want to be a part of my baby's life. I don't care that I'm going to have to pay support. I want to pay support. I don't want to be a deadbeat dad. I want to be involved. I not only want to pay support, I want to see this child. I wish, I'm laughing because it's true. It happens.
It happens.
They want to see the child. They want overnight visitation. They want shared custody, for crying out loud.
Yep.
I mean, what can the boyfriend paramour person, can he demand? Can he go to court and request a paternity test?
And the question becomes whether the court determines him a party of interest and he can file. And that's going to be a pretty lengthy petition, I would think, and a pretty sympathetic judge. And a lot of times people just aren't interested in going down that road, quite frankly, and you could get a lot of roadblocks. That would be a very, very, very problematic situation. We can help. Hear me. We'll help you, but that's a very, very tough situation.
It is. One distinction that I've come across in the last few years is whether, if you're on the birth certificate, does that mean you're locked in to child support? In other words, you say, oh, today the baby's born and I'm the dad, and you learn a couple of years later, a couple of months later, whatever the case may be, maybe not. Maybe that child, as you see it, because when they come out, their little faces are all fat and wrinkly, and you're not really, they don't really look a whole lot like either person. A little bit, some resemblance. But maybe this child, you learn is really nothing like the child you it doesn't look like you. And then you want to get a paternity test. The question is, under the law, if you're on the birth certificate, does that mean you're stuck paying child support? And there's case law in Virginia that says no, but I've had judges get it wrong. And the case law says the birth certificate is not the same as an order. But once there's an order entered, that question's answered and it's done.
Yeah, that's something really important to understand. And let us be very clear about that. Once that order of support is entered and you're the husband by marriage, you're in a world of hurt. It's the wrong time to ask the question. Do we encourage people to ask questions like this for no reason? No, that's not what we're talking about.
No, of course not.
What we're trying to say is these things come across our practice, especially when I did all the guardian ad litem work and stuff in the city for 10 years when I was downtown Richmond. There was a lot of these questions that came up, a lot of these issues that came up, and it was really heart-wrenching and tearing people up and tearing families up, and it was something that people need to understand. And I think you need to understand that when you're in this situation of making mature adult decisions and sleeping with people and understanding that, and I think it's more for men, quite frankly, to understand their rights and where their rights kick in and where they don't, because your life doesn't really change as far as the law when you get pregnant. But,
correct.
Knowing where you come in as a father really does have a play in the law, and when that child is recognized as a child that you get to have some say over.
I think it's important too, just to take a moment and really talk to the mom too. While you wield a lot of power in this scenario, it's not for nothing, right? It's not just, I want him in the baby's life. I don't want him in the baby's life. I want money. I don't want money. It's really important to consider what this child's life will be like with these men or this person in their life or not in their life, and weighing that and balancing that. And it's not just a decision you get to make in a vacuum, but the law, and the research shows, lots of statistics show that children that grow up without fathers just don't do as well in adulthood. By the general rule, there are exceptions where single moms do a great job. And cheers to you, single moms, who have done a great job and raised awesome people to become awesome adults. That's terrific. But the statistics show that intact families, or at least children who know their fathers and have a relationship with their fathers and their mothers, just generally do better in life. They're more productive in school. They're more productive. They go on to college. They get the college education, and then oftentimes are productive members of society. So I would just encourage you to really consider the power that you do hold, because we've really just sort of outlined to all the dads how much power you have, and it is a lot, and it's heavy. And seeking counsel and wisdom from those who have maybe either been through this, or calling us and letting us help you walk through this in a decision-making process, not for us to tell you what to do, but to help you organize your thought process and to figure out what your next right steps are for you and the child. We're always here to do that as well.
Yeah, I just want to say, the last thing I'll say is, we've walked some people through this situation where good counsel can maybe help resolve some things that, because of the tension between the parties, sometimes having that third party is kind of like a mediator. And, I was in a situation once where the two counsel allowed the amniotic thing just so the family would know how to move forward, because it was two young people. They were moving on with their lives. There was all kinds of decisions in the balance of what to do, when to do, how to do. And knowing that, in this case, it turned out that dad was dad and mom was mom, and they both had to adjust their lives, because of that. And it was good for them to know that. And sometimes, especially younger people, we just don't understand, like Jackie said, the power you hold. But really, Virginia has that statute. It's the best interest of the child. And sometimes you have to really wrap your brain around what's best for my child and what do I need to do and what's the best course of action. And sometimes waiting to that 9-month period till the baby's born, may change the dynamic to irreparable kind of things. Like I said, somebody moves away or hides away or whatever. It can really be a difficult situation. Even say, mother, you're wondering about stuff, and dad disappears into the sunset because he doesn't want to pay child support. I mean,
that happens too. That's a fair point.
Yeah, all the time. So I'm not blaming one side or the other. We are balanced here in that sense. We see both issues. So We want to thank you for listening today. We just thought this was an important, timely topic and something most people don't think about. So we thought it would be helpful.
Please let us know if we can answer questions for you from either the mother's side or the father's side, when to file for paternity, how to get that done, when to file for child support, what you should be expecting if that's the case, and what the presumptions are under the law, and just how to navigate these waters. So be sure and like and subscribe the podcast, and we look forward to being back on track into the new year.
Thank you very much.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of What to Do When. For more episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, and we encourage you to check our archives to listen to previous topics. Tune in next week for a new episode and some fresh perspective from Critzer Cardani.